Let's talk about what actually happens in our industry during economic downturns. This is a really good time to reevaluate not just what you're offering, but how you're offering it. So now it begs the question, is the beauty industry actually recession proof? Before we jump into today's episode, I want to share an important lesson that became clear to me running my own business. Growth isn't just about skill, it's about having the right system. I know exactly how hard it is to juggle clients, staff, and strategy all at once, which is why I love Gloss Genius. It's the all-in-one platform every salon owner needs to scale. It doesn't just help you manage your day-to-day like other options. Gloss Genius actually does the work for you that you need to grow. Whether it's rebooking that brings clients back or automating marketing campaigns that fill empty chairs, this platform never stops looking out for you. An added bonus is that it actually is easy to use. So no where do I click moments for you and your team. Clients don't have complicated logins just to book an appointment. It's smooth, it's a smart design, and it works. If you've been looking for a way to do all of that, go to the link in my show notes and use the code SUCCESSFUL to get 50% off your first 2 months of their Gold or Platinum plan to see for yourself. Gloss Genius is all about growth and less busy work. All right, let's get into the episode. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Successful Stylist Academy podcast. If you're new here, I'm Ambrosia. I work with hairstylists and salon owners on building sustainable, profitable careers, the kind that doesn't fall apart every time the economy gets weird. And today we're talking just about that very thing, the economy getting weird. The word recession, it's floating around again. Clients are mentioning money more. Some appointments feel slower, or clients might be stretching their appointments out a little bit. You might be noticing people kind of extending the periods of time they come in a little bit longer. And if you're early in your career, this might be the first time navigating economic uncertainty as a working adult. So instead of ignoring it or spiraling about it, let's talk about what actually happens in our industry during economic downturns and what you should realistically do. First, let's start out with what a recession actually is. We're going to simplify the term of this. A recession is when the economy slows down. That's it. Businesses become cautious, consumers spend more carefully, people delay larger purchases, and savings rates do increase. It doesn't mean that everyone loses their job or that nobody's spending money or that service industries collapse overnight. It means that spending becomes more intentional. And when spending becomes intentional, businesses that clearly communicate tend to hold up better than businesses that rely on impulse. So the distinction of these two really do matter. So although we may see people like being more distinct about their purchasing power and they may be more specific about how often, the frequency, or maybe the types of services they're wanting, this is a really good time to reevaluate not just what you're offering, but how you're offering it, and looking over some of the things that may have fallen between the cracks before, and just asking yourself, how can I serve my top tier clients and get more of those types of clients in my chair and just get really laser focused and honed in. So the reason why I even got into this industry to begin with actually was because I was going to school to get my marketing degree. And then I was getting my hair done one day and I started to observe like how clients and stylists were talking to one another. And I noticed that some stylists were super busy while others just seemed to have a lot of downtime by themselves, at least during the times I would come in to do my hair. And I asked the stylist I was seeing, I was like, how come is it that you're booked out like 3 to 4 months out? And then there's some other stylists here that seem to have a lot of time on their hands. And she kind of snickered about that. And I wasn't, there was no shade there. I was just genuinely curious. And she said, well, when they're in the break room, they tend to just like hang out and talk about their day or talk about their weekend. And she's like, I can't afford to do that. I'm a single mom. I have to hustle. And so I would always talk to the client sitting in my chair and I would have no shame. I always have cards in my purse. And what she was talking about basically is she was marketing herself. And so my eyes lit up because I was like, wow, just looking at how much marketing can make such a big difference in a single space. Like we're talking about the exact same salon and we're talking about all these professionals under one salon space that have had superior education, but some of the stylists there were booked and busy, and some of them just had gaps and holes in their day, and nothing has changed. It just stands the test of time. It's true and through, no matter what decade or now how long I've been in this industry. I've just been seeing these trends reoccurring. And now that I'm seeing that things are feeling very similar to the time period when I actually did experience a recession, I'm looking at the things that I did back then that just seem to continue to work. So I'm going to talk about those a little bit later on, but I think it's really important to understand that when you're reevaluating your clientele and you're looking through your client list and you're asking yourself, like, who are my raving fans or who do love so much that it feels effortless, that I don't have to try to convince them of anything. I don't have to justify my pricing. I don't have to justify my availability. I don't have to set my boundaries with. Who are those people and how can I get more people like them? You're going to find a common thread amongst all of them when you actually start looking at it. It might take you some time too. So, quietly, while you're talking to your clients, you can kind of bring up things with them. You could kind of say things to them like, this is one of my favorite things to do, or you're one of my favorite clients. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but you're one of my favorite people. It's okay to say that to them in a positive way. I mean, don't talk negatively about anyone else, but I mean, you know, just talk about what you love about them and why you love them. And then slip it in. Just let them know, like, if I could have just all my clients like you, then I would be winning the lottery. Like, if you have any friends or family members or anyone that's like identical to you, please send them my way because I just want to see more people like you. And that's such a great way to compliment someone. And I know I've given that example before, but and it'll come up again because it's such a good one. It's such a great reminder that when you have people sitting in your chair or when you already have clients that you love and adore, it's so much easier to flatter them, let them know how much you love them, give them a compliment, and tell them why you enjoy your time with them so much. And if they happen to know anybody, then that is the best way to get other referrals into your chair. Now, I mean, those are old school marketing tactics and they do still work. And that's the reason why I bring it up because we all know that like TikTok and Instagram, those are also really great ways of marketing yourself. But of course, when you're doing that, if you're doing it strategically, it's much easier to capture those types of clients. But if you're not, and you're just like posting things that light you up or that you found fun, then it might be harder to get your ideal client. Keeping in mind that anybody that might be following you on the social media accounts, if they make an appointment with you, you don't have any control over the way that appointment's going to go. You're going to have to get to know that person, get to know their hair, see if you even like one another. Do you line up with one another? Do their expectations match your pricing and timing and all of those other things? So, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to put on an empty plate in the beginning. So that's the reason why I lean into self-marketing, just on the ground and talking to the clients that you already have as such a really strong way to anchor and have like most of those deep-rooted clients in your chair as being something really crucial to the longevity of your business and to help you ride the wave when we go through recessions and when we go through hardships. So now it begs the question, is the beauty industry actually recession proof? You've probably heard somebody say beauty is recession proof. That's not entirely true, but it's not entirely wrong either. Let's look at the history. Okay, so during the 2008, 2009, the Great Recession, US GDP dropped more than 4%. That's when housing and automotive industries were hit super hard, and luxury retail saw major declines. But personal care services declined far less than most discretionary industries and rebounded faster. So, large beauty brands like L'Oreal reported continued global sales growth during that period. Slower growth, but still growth. So, the small wins. This is something referred to as, you may have heard this before, called the lipstick effect. The idea is simple. When people can't afford large luxury services, they still spend on smaller indulgences that help them feel put together. Instead of a $3,000 handbag, it's a $200 hair appointment. Hair sits in a different psychological category than many other expenses because it affects job interviews, promotions, social events, dating, self confidence, identity. People may reduce frequency, but they may simplify their services, but they rarely stop caring. And that's the nuance. Beauty is resilient, not immune. So, with knowing all those things, it's really important to ask yourself, does my value of the service that I offer align with a client's dreams, desires, expectations? Because if we're kind of just hitting on par, we want to just make sure that we're more or less exceeding expectations. And that could be a hard thing to do if we're not really sure what hits the mark. So, some examples might be during the consultation, just listening a little bit more, asking them more questions about their hair lately, asking if there's something that they are really desiring deeply to have, within the scope of their hair, of course. If they lost their job, that's where we get to come up with some solutions on what they can do in the meantime. Remember, we are there to take care of our clients, and we can't assume that clients know the options that they have. But that's where it's really important to get laser focused on those options. So I guess I could talk about one of those options right now, and that would be offering microservices. And microservice can be anything from like a front foil to a face framing to a top foil to baby lights to a sombre, uh, a veneer. A veneer is actually a really great service that my old business partner introduced to me. A veneer simply is when you are painting around the hairline, around the face, and just a 2 inch gap where the part line is. And it's a micro service. It's so nice because you are using less product. It takes far less time, and then the client goes with the product either on their hair, or if you're not comfortable with it, then you can wash them out and then they leave with wet hair. Otherwise, they have to add a blow dry onto it. So get very laser focused on what the service is offering and how it helps with just problem solving for that client. Because that's what we're there to do. We solve problems. And I know that we hear that a lot, but that's really what it comes down to. When the rubber hits the road, we want to make sure that we're touching all points of contact within that service, because if we aren't, we're leaving something on the table. And that means that we are making ourselves replaceable. And we don't want to do that. So some of the things that you can do in the immediate is checking in with clients, see how things are going with their lives, really show interest and understanding like the full picture and the landscape of what their day-to-day looks like, what their job looks like, what their mental health is and all that stuff, because those are the areas that you are going to really be digging into and getting to know the person more thoroughly. Those are also the things that are going to make you irreplaceable. So we don't want to just lean on the technical aspect of the service. We want to make sure that the exchange is more equal, that the client is getting something out of it and we're getting something back out of it in return, because that energy exchange is power. And it also is a thing that is going to fuel your business to get you again over that hump. So, what you'll likely notice behind the chair is if economic pressure increases, here's what you'll realistically see. Number one, appointment stretching, 6 weeks becomes more like eight. Eight might become more like 10. Clients adjust timing before they eliminate the service altogether. If you normally see someone every 8 times per year, you may see them 6 times per year. That impacts cash flow. So it doesn't erase demand, but just understand that you're basically getting a demotion for the year. So that's where becoming more clever about the types of services that you're offering, doing those microservices, or coming up with like these band-aid kind of operations, band-aid options that you can offer to your clients. So that way you are mitigating risk that they're going to end up leaving, or that they feel like they just can't come in to see you again. Maybe you can introduce a dry haircut to your client next time. You can let them know that between services, you offer a dry haircut. It's not the same as a full service haircut. You're not doing a shampoo or a blow dry. You're not going through the entire haircut. You're just going through the surface, you're dusting the ends, you're looking at the shape and you're updating it, and it lets them push out and extend the full haircut service a little bit longer. So coming up with little options, we're all very clever, we're all very creative. Now we've got AI, so you can use, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI device you like to use. But this is where you should be coming up with these ideas. Quick pause and reminder, because Successful Stylist Academy isn't just about marketing strategies. It's all about scaling your business and reaching your full potential. And Gloss Genius was literally built for that. It was founded by two sisters to help entrepreneurs grow their business the way big businesses do, but without the complexity of giving up the parts you love. And you can feel their passion in every feature. Here's how that happens. Gloss Genius helps you get more clients. Their system has things like login-free booking and AI marketing assistance that does the heavy lifting for you. And it's no more logins, no app downloads, turning clients away. Gloss Genius helps you get more per appointment with things like deposits that protect your time, buy now, late, pay later features for higher ticket services, and they even have flat, transparent payment processing and so much more. No more hidden fees, just more revenue on every paycheck. And Gloss Genius has everything you need to keep clients coming back. I especially love the automated booking reminders, memberships, and packages. It's a difference between managing your business and actually growing it. If you're ready to see this in action, go to the link in our show notes and use code SUCCESSFUL to get 50% off your first 2 months of their Gold or Platinum plan to see for yourself. Gloss Genius, more growth, less busy work. All right, back to the show. So I want to challenge you to not look through your phone on social media. Like during the week, just pay attention to what you're doing during your downtime. Try to make every moment of your downtime about promoting yourself, coming up with some of these options that you might have as microservices, coming up with some ideas for your clients that they have to extend their appointments out a little bit longer so that way you can still honor what their needs are. It's really hard for a lot of clients and it's really embarrassing when they have to cut back on their expenses and they have to tell you. Most times they're not going to say anything and they are just going to kind of quietly ghost, or they're going to say like, yeah, I'm not really sure about my schedule. Maybe I'll just reach out later. And in their head, it's because they don't feel safe or comfortable enough to let you know that they might not be able to afford to come into you very often, or they have to extend their service, or maybe they just didn't feel like it was valuable enough for them to want to come back. And that's a harder truth to hear. But a lot of it we can mitigate in the very beginning if we just make sure during our consultation, we open up those conversations so we make it a little bit more comfortable for that client. And obviously, you know your client better than I do, but when you get to know those clients and you are able to have those honest conversations in a way that's positive and a way that's problem solving, then a lot of times you can mitigate the risk of losing them as a client altogether or just not seeing them for longer than possible. Okay, going into number two. Number two is all about service adjustments. You may see fewer major blonding, transformation or full correction services, big ticket changes, and you might be seeing more root touch ups and gloss refreshes and lower maintenance color, those lived in looks, of course. And clients shift towards services that last longer. That doesn't mean they don't value you, it just means they're optimizing their spending. So that's where, new colorful words come in. Like instead of saying ombre, we say sombre. And of course, we hear like foil cashmere, and coming up with clever terms or ways that clients can celebrate the fact that they have to extend their appointments a little bit longer. It makes them feel a little less guilty. Like, for instance, doing the foil face framing. You can come up with a fun name for that. And it's just something that gets the client looking forward to something. And maybe they have always wanted to change, but they were just too nervous to do it. But your way of framing it might be, why don't we try X and just see how you like it? If we do it and it's not your favorite, then at least it's saving you a little bit of money and time. And then if you want, we can do the full service next time. But this will give you a little something so that way you're not feeling like you're walking around with these stamped on roots and it blends in better. So know that when you're coming up with options, you're doing it for a purpose and a reason. You're doing it because for me, I have a lot of gray blending clients or gray coverage clients. So if a client is coming in and they're doing like a level 4 or 5 retouch, like I do, and they're walking around with like a half inch of regrowth, that never feels good. Nobody loves that. It's like they'll make jokes like, oh, I'll just wear my hats more frequently, or I'm going to have to get that root touch up spray in order to put on there more frequently. But that's when it invites the conversation. Then I say to them, why don't we try experimenting with just doing a few baby lights around the part line instead? Because that will break up your demarcation and it will make it less obvious, and it'll soften your regrowth a little bit more. And then they'll say, okay, so how much time would that take? And then that's when I say to them, like, it will literally take me like 30 minutes longer and it's probably about $50 more. And then that's when they say like, "Oh, really? Okay, I didn't even know that was an option." So that's what I'm saying is like offering something in casual conversation, just off the fly like that, where it doesn't take you too much more time. It doesn't cost you much more product. It doesn't cost the client much more money. It's just something where you're adding value. And even if they say like, oh, I don't want to do it today, but maybe next time, you're still kind of planting that seed. And the most of all of it that I'm just trying to really dig into is that you are becoming irreplaceable once again. You're coming with some strategies and answers and ways that a client can push out their appointment maybe a little bit longer and not feel like they're walking around with, I call it zipper head, when it looks like they just literally unzipped their natural hair and you could just see it coming through in like one stamped out line. So, there are lots of ways of doing that. I'm sure you probably know, but that was just one of the many examples I could think of. Okay, number three is increasing price sensitivity. Clients may ask more questions about costs, right? And they might even compare options. They may delay their add ons, and that's just not personal. And I think that's one of the main things that we need to keep in mind, that they're not saying no to us. They're saying no to the service or the cost or the price or the time. And that means no now. It doesn't mean no later. Again, we're still planting those seeds. When we go out to a restaurant and the waitress comes up to you and they're telling you about their specials and they're telling you about their cocktail of the hour or whatever, or they're, talking about their desserts, they are essentially upselling you and they're trying to get those add-ons. But at the same time, they are treating you with a exceptional service so that you realize that there are things, it's kind of their hidden menu. But keep in mind that the hidden menu, that underground menu, or the specials, I should say, the specials that they're telling you about is because back in the kitchen, they've got an overstock of these many things and they came up with certain recipes and they need to get that product moving, right? So, same thing kind of goes for us. We've got all these things in our back bar and we've got services that we can offer to our clients. And we want to do our due diligence in offering those to our clients because that's a level of experience and expertise that we have that we want to offer to our clients. So, when uncertainty rises, people gather more information before committing. And the stylist explains value clearly, retains trust. And the one who gets defensive, that's what creates friction. And that's kind of where you see a lot of those angry conversations happening in social media, is that there was a major, major disconnect between conversation and communication. And it's so important that we, as providers and people who care about the service and care about the people and care about what we do, that we make sure that we go through that thoroughly, that we are heard correctly, and that we understand them correctly as well. So I have a little story for you. I'm going to give you this real world example. I worked with a stylist during a previous economic dip, not like a full on recession, but a slowdown. And she noticed a few cancellations. More clients were stretching at their appointments, slightly lower retail numbers, of course. And her first instinct was to drop her prices. So instead, we just took a beat and we looked at her numbers, and her revenue dipped 8% for 1 month. That's not 40%. It wasn't a collapse. It was just 8%. But from the outside, it felt dramatic to her. Instead of discounting, she tightened her rebooking. And then she added a maintenance refresh option. She strengthened her consultation language around longevity. And then she enforced her cancellation policy consistently. And then within 3 months, her revenue stabilized. And the economy hadn't magically improved, of course, but her systems had. And that's the part that people miss. So I actually have a couple of tips for you on top of all the other tips I was giving you. Here are the top 5 things you should actually do during a time like right now. And I really want you to look at these 5 separate things. Just spend some time with this, and you can actually break these apart 1 week at a time if you want to, if it feels overwhelming. Number one, get clear on your numbers. And I know that that's thrown around all the time. So what you really need to know in your numbers is your average monthly revenue, your average ticket, your rebooking rate, and your monthly break even. If you don't know those numbers, every slow week feels catastrophic, and clarity replaces assumption. So before reacting, just measure those numbers and look at it, because you just might find they're not as bad as you think that they are, or you're going to see a lot of room for growth and opportunity. Number two, double down on retention. When economies tighten, keeping clients matter more than constantly chasing new ones. This means rebooking before they leave, follow up after a major service, personalizing recommendations. That's a really big one right now. Being consistent, of course, which we hear that all the time. I mean, I guess you could apply that to just about anything, but being consistent is really valuable. And then trust stabilizes income. So retention is cheaper than acquisition. And I want you to just remember that over and over again, that acquiring a new client, which we talked about that in a previous episode, acquiring a new client just costs more time and money than it is to retain the client that you've already seen sitting in your chair because they've already gotten to know you. So really focusing on that. When you can get your retention past your 50% mark, then that's when you really get, a clear understanding of your ideal client. Until then, it's really hard because you haven't really quite landed on hitting like your that perfect indicator, understanding your client to the core. Once you hit that 50% mark, then you can really have clarity around that. And that's when you're going to be shooting for that 80% range. I never go for 100% because that isn't a sustainable number to go after. 80% is reasonable, lucky if you get 100, but it's not going to be like that week over week. And it's important because once you hit 80, that's consistently when you hit 80 to 100, that means that it's time for you to increase your prices because now too many people can get into you. So there's kind of a math to this, a little bit of a science, right? And then, of course, our feelings get inserted and then it messes it all up. It turns it into a big old storm. So, right now, just focusing on your retention is going to really help you during this period. Number three, adjust your structure, not value. So, lowering prices should not be your first move. Instead, offer options: full transformation, maintenance refresh, express gloss, or partial highlight. Clients want flexibility, they don't necessarily want cheaper. You can create low commitment services without lowering your positioning. And then number four, clean up your systems. So I was saying this before, but slow seasons reveal weak systems. Audit your cancellation enforcement, your consultation quality, your retail recommendations, your habits, your scheduling gaps, menu clarity. Fixing systems during slower months strengthens you when demand rises again. And historically, demand rises again, and it will. All right. And then your final number five is avoid emotional career decisions. Economic anxiety makes people reactive. That's when they drop their prices impulsively and they jump into independence too fast. They switch salons without planning and then they assume their career is failing. Look at trends, not moments. So the major decisions require patterns, not panic. So look for that. Okay. So for salon owners, if you're a salon owner, your role becomes more visible during uncertainty. Your team watches your response. If you panic discount, they assume instability. If you communicate clearly and stay steady, they mirror that. So this is where you're going to have to really dig into your leadership big britches. So the things that you really want to focus on are retention metrics, expense management, education that increases value, operational efficiency, clear expectations, cut inefficiency out, strengthen your structure, avoid reactive pricing, of course, and then calm leadership stabilizes teams. So when it comes to being a leader, go back and ask yourself, when's the last time we've had a meeting? And I'm not talking about a team meeting. I'm talking about a one-on-one meeting. And this is where you're offering time to sit down with each person and just ask them what they're needing help with, or maybe not ask them, but offer help to them in areas that you see some room for improvement. And do it in such a way that is encouraging that you can help them and come alongside them and support them during that time. This is also where you're going to want to tighten up kind of your marketing skills too, because that is the expectation today. When stylists are coming to a salon, they want to know that they have the owner's back. They want to know that they're not just walking into four walls. They want to make sure that they're a part of an environment that's going to nurture them and help them grow. Because there's nothing worse feeling. And I know most of us have been there. And if you haven't, then you're either very lucky or your time hasn't come yet. I hate to say it, but it almost feels like a rite of passage. And it's disappointing to see that it happens so much. But a lot of us kind of get burned or taken advantage of, or at some point during our career, we just outgrow a space that we're in. And wrong, right, or indifferent, those things do tend to happen. And sometimes it just comes down to leadership. Other times it just comes down to misalignment, right? We always change. And our environments change too. So sometimes we just don't grow with the environment, and it can be as simple as that. But most of the time, it's because we don't feel supported by the salon owner, by the leadership, and that can cause a lot of distress. So, some final thoughts that I just want to add into this: is beauty immune to economic downturns? No. Strong systems, clear numbers, steady communication, those matter more than the headlines. So don't ignore economic signals, but don't dramatize them either. Measure, adjust, stay professional. That's how you build long-term career. And don't forget, we have a membership that we offer to all creative professionals, mostly hairstylists and salon owners, but we actually have a couple of other people that are creative business professionals. And it's such a great place to just offer resources, talk about some pain points, check in with one another, do a quick challenge from time to time, maybe. And, we've got meetings that we put together. Sometimes we have like a little webinar that we'll show off. So we're just growing at this point, and we're really excited to keep seeing how this continues to transform. So that is also something that you're invited to, and I will link that in the show notes as well. So I want to continue to be here to help you dream big, set goals, and take action. And I'll be here next week. I'll see you then. Today's episode is sponsored by Pharmagel, a clean and sustainable skincare line of over 35 years that commits to using safe and natural ingredients to deliver effective results. Visit pharmagel.net and use code SSA15 to earn 15% off your happier, healthier skin.